All right, so this is the Legion Go S from Lenovo, and this is not a review unit that was sent to me by them. This was actually something that I bought by myself, so it's a retail unit. The experience that I have with this handheld is the same experience that you're going to have if you consider buying it yourself. But, you know, I had high hopes for this handheld. When I went to the Lenovo booth at CES, as well as the private event that Lenovo held at CES, I was really excited. I had so much hope for this to perform much better than what it really is. And the asking price of $729 is it's a lot. It's a lot. Out of the box, this is running Windows OS. I will be doing a BazziteOS video once I install Bazzite on this, but I got this on Friday, just like everyone else, and it's Sunday right now. I've spent the last couple of days installing games, trying out different things, and this is more of like an initial impressions video, and then I'll talk about some frames and a couple of benchmarks that I did, but I want to spend more time with this to really get a good feel for it. But there are some things that I still want to share. There are at least 3 glaring issues that I think that should be mentioned to somebody that is considering getting this for themselves as of right now. First and foremost, the specs that are in this thing are a combination of awesome new tech and not so awesome old tech. Hear me out. Out of all the specs that are on screen, the main things that I want you to go ahead and focus on are the Z2 Go. This is a 4-core 8-thread CPU, as well as the RDNA 2, which is an iGPU with 12 compute units. Another thing that I want to go ahead and showcase is the screen. The screen on this thing is immaculate. I know that it's not an OLED. It's technically an IPS LCD screen, but at 1200p, 120 hertz, VRR support, as well as 100% sRGB for beautiful and immaculate colors, I've got nothing to complain about. This is up there, and despite it not being OLED, it is still absolutely beautiful to play games on this device. In the box with this handheld, it is going to be encased not in a typical case like it was on the original Legion Go, but this is actually going to come in some styrofoam mesh sort of enclosure. After that, you have a power adapter similar to the one that you had on the original Legion Go, and then you have this I don't know, Nintendo Labo sort of cardboard display, and this is so that you can actually proudly display your Legion Go S, your $729 PC handheld, on cardboard. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some things that I do like about this handheld. First and foremost, the immediate reaction that I got with unboxing this are the ergonomics. Like, that was the first thing that stood out to me. When it comes down to it, the curvature that's seen here with the grips themselves feel absolutely awesome. The layout of everything that's seen here just feels great as well. The D-pad feels oh so good. I absolutely love the way that this D-pad feels. I was using it in Guilty Gear Strive. Well, I was trying to play Guilty Gear Strive. I was getting my butt whooped, but that's a whole different conversation. But I didn't have any miss inputs, which is kind of what I wanted to go ahead and get across. This D-pad feels great. There's plenty of pivot that's there, and there is a responsive nature to it that is just, it's so good in comparison to some of the other D-pads that I've seen on other PC handhelds. The Hall sensing analog sticks, they feel absolutely fine. The tension that's there on the sticks themselves, it feels very similar to the Steam Deck in terms of resistance. The face buttons, it feels very similar to that of the 8BitDo Ultimate controller. It's not necessarily like the Xbox controller because that's more clicky, and then the DualSense is very mushy, so this is kind of like an in-between when it comes to that. Now, the actual touchpad that is seen here at the front, that's something that leaves a lot to be desired, because although it's there, the functionality is nice, and there is haptic feedback when you actually go ahead and use it. The DPI that's there, I believe it's 400, 800, 1200. It's not good, no matter, at least for me personally, no matter where you're at, because there's such a small surface that's here to actually put things in, that when you're doing very precise movements and inputs, it's not good. You're not going to be playing any sort of RTS games with this touchpad at all. In fact, I wouldn't even want it at this point. I would rather just kick that out entirely from the design. The front-facing speakers that are here are so good. They are a godsend in comparison to what we saw in terms of speakers from the original Legion Go. No matter who you are, if you compare the Legion Go speakers to any other PC handheld that's out there, it's the worst of the bunch. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Now, when it comes to the triggers that are here, it's really awesome because you have this little slider that's right here that converts the trigger from a linear analog trigger to a hair trigger, which is awesome if you're into doing any sort of first-person shooters and you kind of want to have that flexibility that's there. So I like it. It's a nice option. Me personally, I don't play that many first-person shooters anyways, but it is a nice to have. You also have these two like humongous intake vents for your cooling, as well as two macro keys, the Y1 and Y2, which, by the way, they feel comfortable. They're not in the way, and I don't see myself accidentally pushing it whenever I'm playing games anyway. You need just enough force to where if you're holding it in your hands, you're not going to accidentally push it. But if you want to and intentionally push it down, you're not going to have to, you know, kind of put so much force that it's going to feel like you're breaking the handheld as a whole. Now, when you're looking at the top of the handheld, you have your Legion Go Space style button. You have your volume buttons, as well as 3.5mm jack. And here you have two USB 4 ports. Now, these do support DisplayPort 1.4 as well as Power Delivery 3.0. So you can technically connect an eGPU and get performance that way. Here's your exhaust vent, a single exhaust vent for those two intakes that are over there. And the shoulder buttons are nice. It kind of requires a little bit more pressure to actually push these down in comparison to, let's say, a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally or Ally X, but it is nice to have. And I think that over time, you're going to get used to it anyways. And then obviously you have your two Legion space buttons, as well as your menu or your hamburger menu, as well as your select button, so to speak. Now on the bottom, you do have this little tiny micro SD card slot, and I personally do not foresee any sort of heating issues when it comes down to it, just because of the placement and the design of it. Overall, I do like the aesthetics of this. It just overall is just awesome. I like the layout that's here. The only thing that I really truly do not like of this design is literally the trackpad. I think that the trackpad could have been a better choice. It could have been larger, similar to the original Legion Go, or just get rid of it entirely. I personally don't like the design of having kind of like the raised edges that are here. It kind of just feels a little bit odd overall. And in terms of having more of a precise touch or input, it kind of leaves a lot to be desired at the end of the day. I would just rather not have that design in it at all whatsoever. Running synthetic benchmarks on this thing was kind of interesting because when it came down to it, yeah, benchmarks were fine, but I couldn't even finish Furmark on this thing. I had to essentially just scrap the test entirely and go with Time Spy. Now, when it came down to actually running Time Spy on here, I got a 2550, and then when I went to run Fire Strike, I got 6087. So take that as you will. And when it came down to some of the games that I did play, I had issues running them at a full 1200p resolution. Most of them I actually had to drop down to 800p and then upscale using FSR 2 or 3 or whatever the game supported in order to actually get a decent experience. And on some other titles, I had to actually turn on frame generation in order to actually get, well, a decent 60 plus FPS experience on this. All right, so for all of these, I am going to have a custom setting. Essentially, I am pushing everything to the max in terms of processing power, as well as the boost in the TDP for the Z2 Go. Now, in Spider-Man 2, I have this set to 1200p, and if we were to go down, FSR 3.1.0 set to quality, frame generation off, and then the preset that is here is set to low. This is an area that is in the beginning, right when you first start off, and as you can see, the performance that we're getting at 1200p is roughly around 30 fps, which is not necessarily the best. Personally, I prefer to have something that is around 60 if possible. Even 45 is kind of like serviceable when you have a VRR screen, but this is a brand new handheld, which definitely leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the performance that we can expect here. Now, when we have the display resolution set to 800 and then upscale to 3.1.0 quality and then preset on low, we can see a nice little boost in performance, but it's not enough to substantially say that, yeah, I can see 60 FPS on here. In fact, I would probably kind of, shy away from that. Again, the VRR screen is, kicking in and helping things smooth out a little bit, but it's not good enough for me to, you know, say that this is on par with some of the other handhelds that are out there. If we were to go back into the settings and just turn on frame generation for this and just have that run, then things kind of, you know, allow, whoa, all right, cool, awesome. It literally just crashed in the middle of me testing. So as you can see, the overall quality of this handheld definitely leaves it a lot to be desired in terms of the drivers that are here. But again, this could be a Spider-Man 2 situation when it comes down to it. Let's go ahead and try that again. Okay, so we loaded the game back up again. We have FSR 3.1 as well as frame generation 800p and then the low preset that is set on here. So let's see how that performs now that everything is loaded up again. Now here we're kind of, okay, all right. So we're seeing roughly around 70-ish, 68 frames per second on average. This isn't bad. I'm actually kind of, I'm happy with this performance overall. I personally prefer to kind of like hit that 60 FPS to kind of keep things looking nice, smooth, and, you know, just it looks better overall compared to, you know, 45 or 30 FPS. This is just the better way to go around it. So 800p, low preset, and frame generation turned on, which personally, I know that frame generations, a lot of people are like, those are, you know, fake frames and increases latency overall. But I think that as tech progresses, this is just going to become the norm. Frame generation is just going to be a part of, you know, increasing the fidelity of games and increasing the frames that we see, especially when it comes to handhelds overall. Okay, so here we have Returnal, and in terms of the actual settings that we have running, the video is set to 800p, graphics are set to low, and FSR is set to quality. Now, when it comes down to the overall performance of this game on this handheld at that resolution and speed, it's not bad per se. Like, the overall experience isn't horrible. Now, if we were to take this and take the resolution that is here and put it up to 1200p and then continue to leave the graphics on low, the frame rate is relatively tad worse. Not horrible by any means, but, you know, at 30, 34, 35, 36 frames per second, it's definitely not the best. It leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the overall experience. And there are other handhelds that can handle this game much better and at higher resolutions than you can on the Legion Go S. All right, so here we have Avowed, which is something that recently just came out, and thanks to Xbox for sending this my way. Now, currently, if we were to look at the settings that are here, we go down here, the internal resolution is 800p, but we are upscaling for a 1200p resolution for the screen. In terms of upscaling, we're using AMD Fidelity FX3 or FSR3, and then the quality preset is set here. Now, with that, the settings that are here are not necessarily the best. You're looking at, or the performance, excuse me, that you see here is not necessarily the best. You're looking at mid-20s. Sometimes it might hit, you know, upper 20s, but overall it's really not that good. Look at that, it dropped down to 22 FPS. Now, if we were to drop down the quality of FSR to, let's say, even if we were to look at best case scenario for frames and go to ultra performance, we were to go right back out, you're looking at upper, well, mid 30s is kind of like where we're looking at. But the problem with this is that the quality of the character that you see on screen kind of just drops entirely, especially when there's any sort of movement. If there isn't movement, it's not too bad, but the moment that there's any movement that's on screen or from the character, it's pretty bad. Also, there's a lot of aliasing that you can see from the shadows as well. This is a very AMD FSR sort of like situation. This isn't the game itself, it's just FSR and the technology that is within the upscaler. But In terms of the performance that you get here with an 800p internal resolution pushing out to 1200, and just this overall it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the experience that I would get from a modern title with a handheld that just came out recently using the low preset. It shows the limitations of the Z2 Go at 40 watts. It's just not there at all entirely. Finally, we have Cyberpunk 2077, and I didn't even bother running the game. I just wanted to run the benchmark on this. And running the benchmark 40 watt TDP using the Steam Deck preset, I was getting roughly around 30 frames per second, which is not really that great. This is at 1200p using FSR and so on and so forth. But I don't know if you've noticed, but throughout all of this testing, there was a slight power draw as I was running games and running benchmarks at a 40 watt TDP. That means that the included power adapter that is there for this handheld cannot keep up with the power draw that is needed for your processor. Now, I don't know if I have a dud and maybe the unit that I bought from Best Buy just kind of has that continuous power drain that's there. So that means that inevitably, no matter what, if I'm playing plugged in at the highest TDP, I'm going to inevitably run out of battery regardless. But something that you should keep into account if you're considering getting this for yourself. Speaking of battery drain, we should probably talk about the battery life that you can expect while playing games on this handheld. Now, at that 40 watt TDP that I use to push everything to the max, that's a custom setting. So I push everything to 40 and beyond, and the profile that I had would allow me to get an hour and 5 minutes of actual battery life while playing on this handheld. When it comes to 25 watts, you're expecting around an hour and 30 minutes. At 15 watts, 2 hours and 10 minutes, and at 5 watts, which is literally the bare minimum that you can have this handheld on, you're getting roughly around 6 hours and 15 minutes. Now, if I'm being 100% honest with you, that 5 watt TDP is something that it's hard to recommend. Even on Pixel titles, like I was getting roughly around 30 to 40 frames per second while playing Celeste at that TDP. So, I would add a little bit more, maybe 7 or 8 watts, just to kind of like keep things going and giving enough juice to the CPU in order to allow for other functions to happen while playing games. But regardless of that, that's what you can expect while playing on this handheld. So who is the Legion Go S for? That's kind of like a weird question to answer, because normally I kind of have like an idea of like, okay, this product, this handheld, this piece of tech is designed for somebody that wants to go ahead and do these specific things. But with the way that the PC handheld market is going, there just isn't space for something like this at that price point of $729. If this was like $499-ish, maybe I could see that working. $499, $450, maybe even $599 if we're being, generous. But at $729, like you can take that $729, you can buy an original Legion Go and you'll be set. You could also get a Steam Deck if you want to, and you will experience similar performance to this. You can get a top of the line Steam Deck OLED and you will get similar performance. You can get an ROG Ally or ROG Ally X and you will get better performance than you can on the Legion Go S, and you will probably pay less than what you would for this. Like, it's hard for me to recommend this to anyone. Now, I do know that most of the time when these handhelds first come out, performance is not as best as it could be. There are drivers that need to be updated, bugs that need to be squashed out, and things improve as time progresses. I saw that with the MSI Claw. I saw that with the ROG Ally and Ally X. But with this, I'm not really that enthused. I'm not really that excited about it. I am planning on installing BazziteOS on here to really see whether or not this is a Windows thing or if this is something that's tied more towards the processor that is built into this thing, because I do know that Bazzite tends to get rid of some of the Windows bloat that's there. So who knows? As far as performance that I've seen in the past between Windows and Bazzite, the relative performance difference is 1 frame either plus or minus. So it's kind of, within the margin of error, but I digress. At the end of the day, I want to go ahead and get a piece of software that will go ahead and perform the best way possible. Now, if you want to go ahead and protect your identity as well as run with software that works and gets rid of all of your stuff online on the internet, then you might want to go with today's sponsor, Incogni. You like spam? I don't think there's anyone that actually likes spam calls, spam texts, bot calls. I mean, any of that stuff, junk mail, like, no, none of that. No one likes that stuff. So I got fed up with it. About 6 to 8 months ago, I started looking online to see how I could get rid of all of this stuff. And I found out how all this stuff actually works. See, whenever you put in information on a website or any sort of text field, that website or store can sell your data to data brokers, and they'll shift all that data into different buckets. Now, for example, I'm a guy that lives in Florida that's in his mid-30s. That's one bucket. Another bucket would be kind of like a guy in his mid-30s that's bald, for instance. That's another bucket. A dad, another bucket. And they'll take those buckets and they'll sell it to marketers, and marketers will go ahead and spam you. Boom, there it is. Now, for me, I was sick of all of this stuff, and I found a company that's called Incogni. Now, Incogni, it took 5 minutes to set up, super easy. And within those 5 minutes, like shortly afterwards, there were over 70 data brokers that were reached out to and told, hey, delete his data off of your archives and put it on a suppression list. So that way you never have to deal with them again. It's honestly awesome because it not only made me feel much more comfortable and have peace of mind that my data was being removed from all of these agencies, but it also meant that I was going to get less spam. The cool thing is that there is a dashboard. You can see how many requests have been sent out, how many have been completed, and so on and so forth. It's super easy. You just put in your name, address, a little bit of more information, and boom, it's done and said and going. If you're tired of getting all of that spam and you want to keep your data private and just have peace of mind online, then follow the link in the description below to get 60% off your first year of Incogni. And thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video. So what do you guys think of the Legion Go S? Is this something that you're interested in? Are you considering getting it, or are you going to wait for a sale? Or are you just going to wait for the SteamOS version that's going to be coming out in a few months? Let me know down in the comments down below. And also let me know what games you want me to test out on the BazziteOS version of this that I want to go ahead and, just see whether or not the games run well overall. I want to see if there's a difference in terms of things. But if you want to hear my thoughts on the Legion Go, then click this video over here. And if you want to hear my thoughts on the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus, then click this video over here. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.